Dylan, are you still in here?
Yeah, I'm still in here.
Hey, I got a question for you with the with what's going on with the missile strikes.
Huh?
I watched, and it actually kind of ties into some of Destiny's current arcs as well because um, Lex Friedman. I'm now on a Lex Friedman kick. I'd never heard of this guy. He did a great interview with Destiny and Ben Shapiro, and then he did one before both of them with Fiona Hill, and I know
Hmm?
you're pretty familiar with her. And she's in that interview.
I
She's
saw
still
some of it. I saw some clips of it actually.
it's really really good, really
It is
good. You should
good.
check it out in its entirety. But she still refers to, and Fiona Hill for chat, she was a Russian and like Ukrainian European expert for the National Security Council, right, Dylan?
Mm-hmm.
And then she testified against President Trump in 2019 over that Ukrainian quid pro quo thing. That's how she came to the forefront of American politics or whatever. But anyway, so she's out of office now, and she's working at the Brookings Institution, but she's still an expert in all this stuff. In the interview with Friedman, she referred to Putin still as as a rational actor. She says, a lot of people say he's not. I still think he is. And I know you had that conversation with the Vanguard, Dylan, not too long ago. I listened to it on a car ride. Do you still consider Putin a rational actor, or are you on the fence?
Absolutely. He's put himself in a irrational position. So the reason I believe Putin's a rational actor, because I think he's politically intelligent. I think that everything that he's done makes sense if you understand where he's getting his information from. I don't think the decision to invade Ukraine was smart, but I think this was because he was working with incomplete information. If you listen to how people talked about the Ukrainian invasion at the start of it on February 24th, the whole world thought Ukraine would collapse in like a microsecond.
Yep, 2
Like
weeks,
it'd be
yeah.
a week and it would be over, and then Russia, and then there would be strong sanctions in response, but the West would once again let Putin do whatever he really wanted to do, outside of maybe a few economic repercussions. The reason they thought that, in my opinion, is I think they really underestimated, and I think this is a failure of the FSB, I think this is a failure of Putin's administration, and the people handing Putin intelligence. I think they really failed to estimate exactly how strong the will to fight was in Ukraine, that Zelensky's government would stay there and they wouldn't flee. They did try to assassinate him multiple times, though. And I think they extremely overestimated how competent their military was and underestimated how much corruption had whittled them down. But this was also the same mistake made by like Western intelligence agencies. And I think that largely when it comes to the when the West made that mistake, I think it was largely due to a lack of human
Pretty sure most
intelligence.
of the-
We have a
I
lot
think
of
most of the
technical
XTC and that
intelligence
stuff
when it
is,
comes
like,
to satellites and
public
like
at this
hacking
point, right?
equipment.
The
But
over
we
the
don't.
I'm
horizon
still surprised
capability
that,
to
like,
people.
shit didn't go crazy after the fucking abortion shit that happened. Jesus.
What?
Or
Okay.
that's public.
Okay, he's just fucking okay. Why are you waiting fucking this motherfucker, man? Why is he fucking doing this shit? What a dumb fucker. Ain't those people crazy? Ain't this dumb shit? Big ass motherfucker, man. Fucking meth Andy. What do you think of this like, man? Is he banned? Jesus Christ. I'm gonna go fucking
1.5 million winter uniforms just disappearing from Russian stockpiles. This is the type of stuff that I don't think the Russians prepared for or understood how much corruption had whittled down the military. And the West didn't understand it either. And I think that's why he made such an irrational decision, is because he was working with incorrect information.
I think it's a little bit sad because, like, my Western bias about the show a lot here, but like when you look at movies about anything having to do with America, it's always like, like the only reason why our troops got captured is because Senator Randall had a deal with the enemy country and some corporation was rigging everything, and these brave soldiers are fighting against the military-industrial complex. Or like that's like every single plot line. But the reality is for the United States, like the way our military, our State Department, everybody, the way the interactions are really complicated. Foreign affairs are really complicated. But then when you look at movies about like Eastern issues, namely like Russia, it's always like, oh, the party members lied so that they wouldn't get in trouble, and oh yes, everybody lied because they want to keep getting their paychecks and they don't want to bring any issues up and rustle any feathers. But it seems like that's actually the case. Like that's a pretty accurate accounting for. Like, did you ever see the Chernobyl miniseries?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, there was a lot of that in there, and it almost felt like propaganda. But like, oh my god, like looking at the Russian military, I'm like, damn, like how many people are just afraid to say that, bro, shit is fucked. Like Jesus.
Well, the thing is, it's a culture. in
Yeah,
Russia,
yeah,
right?
exactly,
The
yeah.
problem is that people think that and I have this. I remember listening to Dave Rubin and Matt Walsh and Ben Shapiro talk about the Russian military. leading up into this, they didn't really, not about this war, but just about them generally, when they were talking about, the military ads Russia would put out, and they're like super strong, they're manly, and then they would intersplice that with an American military ad that's like, oh, we love trans soldiers and we want a diverse military. People will talk about like, wow, we're gonna get our clocked clean in a war. We're gonna get smashed because Russians fight for patriotism and the love of country. But the truth is, in Russia, there's a culture of corruption in the military. Because let's say that you're one of the guys who sells like equipment out of the back of your truck, which a lot of these people who work at the supply hubs do. They basically just fill up the back of their truck, go to a local like gang or whatever, whoever wants to buy it, and they'll just sell it out of it. That's how they like lost 1.5 million winter uniforms, where they're gonna have soldiers all across Ukraine in the middle of the winter freezing to death. That's ultimately gonna happen because of that mistake. But the reason why that happens is because these people are paid terribly and they don't have a lot of opportunities for career advancement once you're like the commander of like one of these small little supply hubs. And so for them, they kind of see it as kind of like a perk of the job. And so let's say you're a Russian who really cares about Russia. You got in the military because you believe in Russia. You believe in the historical legacy of the Kievan Rus. And you don't want to engage in corruption because you love your country and you don't want to steal from it. Other people are going to look at you as suspect. Not because you're going to rat them out. Even if you don't rat them out, that doesn't matter. By you not participating in the system of corruption, they see you as suspect and a threat to their bottom dollar, and they'll make sure to get rid of you. Not kill you, but make you lose your position or be kicked out of like this specific oblast, kick you out into another one, try to move you to a different place in the chain of command. They want to protect their bottom dollar, and a lot of people underestimated how corrupt the Russian military was, and it still is insanely corrupt. A lot of the equipment, honestly, that got stolen, that soldiers were supposed to be given at the start of the war or now during mobilization, is being sold on like the Russian internet for like 10 to 20 times its original price, with like 20,000% increases.
That was one of the reasons in that. Did you see that? It's kind of gory, but did you see or no? You know about that sledgehammer video, right?
Yep. Yeah, I
part
saw
of the
video.
messaging of that was basically had to do with that like these soldiers are retreating and they're leaving our equipment and selling it online and shit. I think that was part of the messaging for that thing.
It was very, very bad video. But I mean, like, the thing is, the people who are paying the most for this is the average Russian soldier. I don't know if you've seen these videos. Did you see the video about the tampons by chance?
I think so. Just like the general like state of disarray for their supplies and shit. Yeah.
So the it's so bad for the Russian the average Russian mobilized soldier at this point that you don't get all of your equipment. You have to go out and buy your own equipment. This is a massive issue that even the Russian government has had to admit to some degree. And so there's this video of this local Russian commander talking to soldiers saying, you need to go out to stores and buy your own medical bags because we don't have one to provide it to you. And then the soldier responds, but ma'am, there's no medical bags anymore. There's no medical equipment. We can't get gauze. We can't get tourniquets. They're just all sold out in the local markets. And she says, well, what you can do is go to your local, the Russian equivalent of Rite Aid, and buy tampons. And if you get shot, you can take the tampon and plug it into the bullet wound, and it'll fill up with blood and stop the bleeding. That is completely not true, but this is what the Russian military has a result. It's no, Destiny.
As memey
as
it is, I think you for emergency situations, I think you can use women products. I've heard of first aid responders sometimes in like dire situations. I'm not saying you literally stick a whole fucking tampon in your arm, but I think those products can actually like stop bleeding in emergency situations. No.
I mean,
feel like they call it KIA. Yeah, they call it KIA.
There is
in action.
The amount of damage that is those things are not going to save a lot of lives. They might save one or two, but their effectiveness compared to like a tourniquet and the other type of medical equipment is like almost incomparable. They're not. I think because the thing is, if it sucked up enough blood to stop the bleeding, which is the intention of the tampon, it would kill women if they put it in their bodies.
Wait, what?
If it sucked up that much blood, yeah, it wouldn't be safe for women to put it in their bodies.
Wait, why not?
If they'd sucked up that much liquid, yes. Like the point of these it's to suck up liquid. It's to stop the bleeding.
He's saying it would turn them into a withered husk.
Wait,
just dehydrate them.
Like enough to stop the bleeding. Yeah, it would mummify these women from their vagina.
What? Oh God. Yeah, but you didn't think about that, Destiny.
Yeah, you didn't think about it. Either way, the main problem is that the Russian military just doesn't have the equipment to make up for these shortfalls. And so now the Russian people have to go out and buy the equipment that was meant for them anyway out of scalpers.
Wait, hold on.
And it's had a massive impact on morale.
Please don't let this be the beginning of a tampon arc.
No. Hey, he's saying that because they would suck up so much liquid, it would. Wait, you know?
It would not actually kill them. You can't take You cannot take medical equipment and shove it up into. Look.
Wait, no, I
okay?
agree. I'm just saying that, like, vaginas aren't always bleeding, right?
No, they're not always bleeding, but I would assume it would suck up other liquids as well, right?
Okay, true. It could. Okay. Gotcha. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
thank
Yeah,
you.
I just wanted to clarify that for Chuck.
Dylan's
That was
vagina theory has been affirmed.
All right. So, speaking of crazy conspiracy theories, what about this idea? What about the idea that
What about it?
Some people in the Russian higher ups, maybe in the military or the oligarchs, that they're trying to destabilize Putin, like by taking advantage domestically of this crisis? Do you think there's any possibility that that's the case, Dylan? That given that he's the one who's effectively spearheading this invasion, it's not going well. Now there's a potential risk of Article 5. Do you think that anybody domestically would be interested, like any prominent Russians, some of the millionaires, billionaires, oligarchs, that they'd be interested in overthrowing him and replacing him with perhaps themselves or somebody else?
I think there's conversations happening, but there's none of it's happening in public. There's if somebody came out publicly and said we need to overthrow Putin, like obviously that person would immediately be dealt with. A lot of these oligarchs are like falling.
You mean
out
they would
of
have
windows.
one of those suspicious food poisoning states?
One of those food poisonings, or they just collapsed during a run, or they just fell out of a 20-story window with 20 stab wounds. They accidentally stabbed themselves 20 times. But I think like
They live
the
in a
highest
first floor building. It's really remarkable.
The big thing I see people pointing to right now is Alexander Dugin's statement that kind of seemed like he was hinting at assassinating Putin. But Alexander Dugin has often like overemphasized the amount of influence he has. I do think
his daughter died, right?
Yeah, Alexander Dugina. The last thing that went through her mind was her steering wheel when the car bomb exploded. Yeah, her.
Jesus.
But the thing is, he doesn't have that much influence really in Russian politics outside of like extremely Russian far right circles. He's mostly a huckster, if I'm being completely honest. So
Dugin is.
The question, yeah, Dugin. The question is, in private, what type of conversations are going on? I'm sure there are conversations going on in private about what do we do in a post-Putin Russia? What do we do if this doesn't go right? But I doubt, even now, there's enough enough, I guess, discontent for them to make a public challenge. And so this type of thing would, I think, happen very quickly, and most of this talking would go on behind closed doors, so it's very hard to say. I'm almost positive, though, these conversations are going on, because these oligarchs don't like they're self-interested at the end of the day.
I'm almost terrified to Google this because I'm sure I'll get a visit from the FBI if that's the case. But like, do you know anything about like the Russian nuclear chain of command? Like, I know it came up during the conversation with the Vanguard, because the prevailing, complaint from a lot of people, especially on the left, is that, we're risking nuclear war to whatever extent. And couldn't Putin just issue a single directive and, nukes be fired? And you tried to make the case that there's a chain of command and multiple officers would have to be involved. And he would hesitate to give the order because you don't want to give an order that would be disobeyed. And that one has a good chance of being disobeyed. Is the chain of command to access the Russian nuclear arsenal, do we know if it's anything like what we supposedly know of the American chain of command, where, yeah, the president's the ultimate authority, Congress can't get involved and whatnot, but there are multiple officers involved down to the tactical level?
Yeah, fuck. I read a really good article about this. It's actually what convinced me. I'd have to go find you the article, and I could send you the specifics. I don't remember the name of every single person in the chain of command.
Cringe.
But it's not. I think some people believe that it's like a cartoon, that he like presses a button,
Right.
and then like the missile gets launched. Like it's like connected to like the command structure. Like
Yeah, it's like
immediately
Destiny playing Factorio. or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah, it's like a cartoon, but that's not how it works. He gives the command, and then it goes to one person, who then gives the order to another person, gives the order to another person, who eventually gives the order to a person who is actually going to deliver the nuclear weapon. It's probably not going to be from like some global thermonuclear warhead. It's going to most likely be from like an artillery piece, or it's going to be from like a trunk-launched missile from within Ukraine. Probably would not be from a plane because they don't have complete air superiority over Ukraine, so it wouldn't make sense for them to try to use a plane that could go very, very poorly for them. So if any single one of those people along the chain of command like basically stops it, then obviously like Putin's either going to have to deal with that person and give the order again. But at that point, you've already like reached a crisis where people are basically saying no to your orders, and that you're gonna have to like make an example of them, or you're gonna have to go through it with it again. And what if somebody says no again? Then it's even worse for you. And so there's a decent chance that the order won't even be followed. And it's not like this hasn't happened before in history. This has happened before.
I think once on the U.S. side and once on the Russian side, right? Am I making that up?
Yeah. Yeah, there's like a very famous example during the Cuban Missile Crisis in a Russian submarine that people talk about all the time.
Well, Putin may pull an Elon Musk and fire everybody and then do everything himself.
True.
That Fiona Hill episode of Friedman, one of the other things that she talks up, and it was kind of unprompted, was this idea that she didn't phrase it this way, but basically she was making the case that when discussing Trump's impeachment hearing the first time, the Ukraine quid pro quo, she believes that you could, I think her exact words were, you can draw a straight line from that to the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And she made the case that, and I'm going to ask you both about it, see what you have to say. Because...
Yeah, just on that, just real quick, there's a story that I have up called The Untold Story of Russiagate and the Road to War in Ukraine. She might have read this exact article. It's an hour read, but I have this up that I want to listen to by Jim Rutenberg on the New York Times. She might be referring to this article, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, so that's interesting. So I want to ask you both about that because, you know, the conservative refrain is that, man, if Donald Trump had been reelected to a second term, Russia would have never invaded Ukraine because, you know, Putin was intimidated by Trump or whatever. Right. I understand. But they're pointing to the absence of an invasion during his presidency. They're like, look, you know, he invaded Crimea during Obama's presidency. Now he's invading Ukraine during Biden, and Trump was the gap year, so to speak. And she was making the case that Trump's treatment of Ukraine, you know, denying them, trying to like withhold the congressionally approved foreign aid and trying to use them as basically a surveillance tool for a political opponent, showed the world that he didn't take Ukraine or their safety seriously. And that might have inspired Putin. Like that might have entered into his calculus. Like, oh, the United States doesn't give a shit about Ukraine, even though they might say that they do. And this can be another Crimea. What do you guys think about that?
This is the main criticism I hear from a lot of people trying to analyze how we could have actually stopped this. Because a lot of people say, how could we stop this? And they're like, well, just give up all the Donbass. It's like ridiculous proposals. But this is the one that I think actually does have weight. I think, like, if you look at the Korean War, when the North Koreans, like, crossed the line into South Korea, a lot of that was caused by, like, a speech made by the Secretary of State at the time. At least this is my belief. People can disagree with me. Where he basically didn't include Korea in his big speech about, like, American interests in the regions. And it sent the message that America didn't really care that much about Korea. It wasn't a strategic priority. They cared more about Japan and possibly Taiwan and some other country. And so, therefore, they didn't care about Korea. So if we go across the line and we cross this red line here in the sand, they're probably not going to do anything. Then America obviously did do something, and we fought the whole Korean War. And I think Putin could have had it in his mind that this was somewhat like that. That, you know, America sent some aid to Ukraine, but during the Obama administration, they didn't send lethal aid. And during the Trump administration, they actually kind of slow-walked aid, even if lethal aid was kind of sent during the Trump administration. And so I think Putin might have thought that America would not be as supportive of Ukraine as they are right now. And I also think I could see it as he didn't even think this would come into calculation because Ukraine was going to collapse in 2 weeks anyway. So it doesn't matter if the West was going to send them HIMARS. Their government wouldn't even be there anyway to accept them.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Destiny, what do you think? Especially since you have that article queued up.
I want to read the article first. I'm not sure. I don't know how much that factored into everything.
Now who's Googling the answer? Giving me shit about Barstool Republicans.
Yeah, I did. True. Stay mad.
Oh, fair. All right.